our exciting talk with the evolving digital landscape. We have Gary Quaisbarth and Emma Jane Alexander here today. Gary's currently working for McDine. Prior to that, he was senior architect for TrueClear, global based in Orange County, California, and director of cloud visualization for Jupiter Systems based in San Jose, California. He holds a secret clearance and has deep experience in XR visualization, experience design, virtual production, next generation collaboration solutions, and software development, leveraging cloud-based AI, ML for A-list client such as Resorts World Vegas, SeaWorld, Disney, and many more. His undergraduate work in broadcast engineering, computer science, and extensive continuing technical training in IP-based technologies with Cisco, Microsoft, and AWS Architect has kept his career focused on converged AV IT technology solutions. A serial entrepreneur, he was recruited by several startups to drive products and solutions, delivering innovative enterprise software and hardware products and services to market. Serving as director of technical services for Anheuser-Busch Entertainment, had the opportunity to hone his skills developing new traction technologies going well beyond conventional AV IT solutions, which encompassed virtual reality, motion-based simulators, and augmented reality solutions. Emma Jane has spent 24 years in higher education supporting institutions in the UK and US with their virtual reality initiatives. Specifically, she has overseen the operation of 3D visualization centers, leading in the design, implementation, and operation of them to support teaching, research, and entrepreneurial activities. She joined McDine last March as technical sales consultant, supporting the higher education market, and has a focus on helping clients determine the best solution to capitalize upon the return to investment, whether that's to support impactful quality decision-making or enhancing the student-faculty experience and everything in between. Please enjoy this next presentation by Gary and Emma Jane. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, John. That's a fantastic introduction for us both. Thank you. I'm going to take just a long 5 minutes of your time, and then I'll be handing over to my teammate, Gary. Okay, I'm going to share some slides in just a moment. But for the moment, I just want to set the scene a little bit for us, because this is an unusual and yet really interesting and great opportunity for Gary and I to talk about our work in a slightly different way. We're often very product and very solution focused, which is great and right for what we do, but it's wonderful to get the chance to talk about things a bit more broadly and to look at the bigger picture, that what we do and how it fits in. Gary and I's goal is to share thoughts with you on the world of visualization and installations and how it's changing, and to give you a few examples and some use cases, if you like, to put it into context. Now, when I changed jobs last year and moved from higher education to the private sector, when I arrived at McDine, they said, okay, so you know a little bit about higher education, that's great. What else are you interested in, and how else do you want to work this position? And I said, well, I'm really interested in the creative industries and how immersive art installations are popping up and providing all sorts of different kinds of entertainment and health benefits. And I'm curious about that. I'd like to watch that industry and see what we can do with them. So that conversation for me has been interesting with clients in the last 9 months, and it's kind of unfolding and helping me to be able to offer better solutions and better comment to people. So let me just share a few pictures here. If we can have screen sharing enabled, that would be lovely.
Yeah, I was wondering where that button was. I was like,
There we go. Okay, just a few photographs here, although not photos that I've taken. You'll swiftly, or some of them I have actually. Okay, so this first image here, I'm sure you've seen this one before. I don't know whether this one's staged or how true to real life this is, but I think this looks pretty close. What we notice here is that everybody in this street is looking at a newspaper and they're reading some print media, and they're all individually engaged with their own devices, if you like, which I'm sure we can all draw familiarity with regards to the digital world. And what I'm thinking about today is that whilst we think about the tools and technologies bring vastly different revolutionary experiences for us, the reality is I'm not quite sure that they do. If we think about the advances in quotes of things like radio, print, TV, different kinds of media, lectures, audio, there's a delivery device for the information and the experience, but ultimately it's really about storytelling. And what remains at the core of it is the human experience that we have as storytellers and narrators, and then the people consuming those stories. And what really connects these people is the place that they're in as they're reading their newspapers, I think. Gary's going to be talking about different systems and some designs and some solutions and some how things transition from out the box and what the interdisciplinary means. And what we're finding is that the location that people choose to be in and that they choose to have their entertainment or educational or research experience, that's where there's a lot of blending happen at the moment. I'm going to step ahead to another photograph now. Remember this one, people say this one looks a little antisocial, everyone's doing their own thing. Well, let's take a look at the next picture. So, okay, they're all still looking at newspapers, but for some reason this picture looks a lot more sociable, and we can see that they're having conversation about the same stories that they're consuming, and they're sitting in a way that makes it possible and comfortable to have good dialogue with each other too. So they're both consuming their media and also able to socially engage, which is interesting to see. Now, the takeaway from this is that whilst we often think about technology being disruptive, and yes, to a degree, it can be very disruptive, can't it, when our workflows are changed. You know, the important changes, I think the routine of change is a little more alarming, but the routine of disruption should become a little more palatable as it goes on. Now, the next newspaper image, this one looks more sociable. It's more about storytelling. And I think what I want to jump to swiftly to start to set the scene for this a little differently is this next image, where we can see a nice traditional, rather glorious photograph of people in a university environment receiving some education or being involved in some kind of research discussion. So this is a very traditional photograph. We're all familiar with these things. We see these things today. And then remember that this is about teaching and this is about formal education. Well, doesn't it look pretty similar to another environment that we know, which is traditionally less about formal education and research and more about entertainment and being together and sharing an experience? Well, yeah, these are all pretty similar things. I really should have chosen a photograph that had people in the movie theater, shouldn't I? I'll know that for next time. But you get the idea of the point I'm trying to make here, how all these spaces start to look alike and blend, and it's getting a little excitingly confusing what you're doing in what location. The next image is a little different. This one is of me taking my kids to an event about 2 years ago. We went to see the immersive Van Gogh experience, and we went because I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be educational. I thought it would give us something to talk about. And I was kind of right. It was a lot of those things, and it was a lot of fun. But what happens is when you walk into one of those installations with a teenager and a teenager, you get a kind of mixed reaction, because as a participant in an audience, you don't quite know where to sit. You know, no one's going to come and lecture to you in a teaching capacity. The whole point of you being there is to consume the information and the story unfolding around you and be with your fellow participants. But the actual culture of how you're supposed to move around those kinds of environments is still in its infancy, and everybody goes in a little bit awkward, not quite sure where to stand or what to do. In contrast to when you walk into a formal lecture environment, you know where you're going, you know you're supposed to sit down, you're not necessarily supposed to be quiet for the hour, and you are supposed to engage. So when you arrive at these installations, you have to figure out the rules of play and think about what the engagement is with the space and with the people that you're with. Needless to say, I took 2 surly teenagers in, and about 45 minutes later left with 2 happy, very chilled teenagers who thought it was all amazing, which was great because I'd spent a lot of money getting us there. So hold that thought. Remember, we've been going through the solitary experiences with newspapers, the collective experience, the teaching, the movie theaters, the immersive art experiences. Well, the next place that I took my children to, and I do see a theme here of where we have family vacation style experiences that look familiar and very similar to my day job. You'd have to poll my kids to see how much they enjoy that or not. But in general, I do seem to get a good response. And the next one was even more interesting. And what I love about this is just a snapshot of pictures I took on the day. And what blew me away was how everybody that was there interacting chose to do it in different ways and chose to talk about it in different ways afterwards. So not only how do we consume this information when it's there, but what do we do with it afterwards is pretty special. And I'm going to just flick through these quickly again. Remember, static individual experience with media. Okay, same media, a little bit more of a social environment. formal education, nothing immediately in front to inform, but there's a presenter at the front who's talking and engaging. But to these places for fun and for relaxing and for connecting with our friends and our family. And now we did the same with these places, which are different spaces, but the technology is all starting to get blurred. And as it is here, and then as it is here, this picture that I've now realized is also behind me, this is a good example of where we have a lot of this blending going on. We have subsurface visualization work that was done at the University of Wyoming. We have offshore wind turbine visualization. This is storytelling. We're still just telling the stories here. But the final point I want to make before I hand over to Gary is one of the challenges today with Zoom, whilst we can get on pretty well with this as a media to communicate and share some ideas, I think one of the significant challenges is that whilst I feel in particular right now, I suppose I'm the one that's speaking and my camera's on, I'm exposed to a degree and you can all see me and I can see one or two of you. But what Gary doesn't know is that I'm looking Gary right in the eye right now. He doesn't know that. He
Got you.
that I'm looking at. You got me now because I'm telling you, I'm still looking at the corner of my screen and I'm not looking at the camera. And whilst there's corrective different kinds of tech out there that I've seen in the last couple of weeks that'll redirect your eyeballs and make your eyeballs point where people think you should be looking, the reality is you're still not doing it. So you're not feeling it. You're not the receiver of the view. One thing that I think is fascinating, which I'll end with as my final thought, is that as a community of participants, whether it's in a museum or a gallery or an educational space or an entertainment space, what we still really want is the ability to communicate and connect with each other. And whilst I'm excited to be in the metaverse, have digital experience and be represented as an avatar and all the wonderful things, and share and connect and conduct commerce and different kinds of things. And I also thought for the human connection to be able to see the expression change on Gary's face as he describes something, or to be able to watch Frank talk about some teaching nuance and some protocol of something that's really important, and to get over that key threshold of learning. And I want to re-say, and I want to be able to make that eye contact, to make that experience ever so meaningful to me. Because whilst procedurally and academically, we can glean a lot from different kinds of exchanges of knowledge, that very more personal experience that we can get with some of these beautiful large displays is really quite special. And I think there's something to be said for how we're watching all these experiences blend together. And I think I'll hand over to Gary now, and I'll be happy to stay on for some questions later on. Thank you for letting me make a few comments and for setting the scene with the beginning of the talk here. Over to you, Gary.
So I did see one question, something about, was that Meow World or something? I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, the one in Denver that was Meow Wolf. There's a couple of plenty of these around the country. The Meow Wolf one was interesting because they had lots of exhibits that you could walk around and see very fantastical things. And then they had a big room that was kitted out with an immersive art installation. And it was fun watching how everybody sort of levitated towards their favorite kind of areas.
Very cool. I think, so interesting comment. Well, of course, I think it's interesting. So when you see the pictures of the folks looking at the newspapers and everybody's like this, what was the difference between that and a cell phone? I mean, everybody complains, oh, everybody's doing this all day. You know what? When you were on a plane, even 10 years ago, that's what people were doing. That's what they were doing. And the airport was full of them. And it was really annoying because those things were like, you read a newspaper on a plane, it just, you end up black. But anyway, thank you for the presentation, Emma Jane. Great to be here, and thanks to everyone for coming today, and thanks for the invitation to present. So this is going to be a little bit different. We are going to talk about VR, but we're also going to talk about the changing marketplace and some of the things that we see from a trend perspective. We're not going to get into specifics on technology much. If you have specific questions about things, feel free to ask. We'll do the best we can to answer, or shoot a note or whatever. But don't hold your questions. Ask them whenever, and we'll field them and answer them accordingly. So let's look at CAAVs, right? So we all know what they are. And from an industry point of view, not much has changed with that point of reference in a long time. So you can call it Big Viz, VR, CAAV, whatever. This is kind of what the perception is, right? They're either big walls or kind of rooms. They're really dark. They're generally tucked away in a corner of a building somewhere, and there's only a few people that know how to use them. Everybody wears glasses, and so on and so forth. But that said, what they're being used for is incredibly important. And it's revolutionized many things that we take for granted on a daily basis. There is no question that Big Viz is big money. And in the past, and I say past, it's been built for very specific use cases, be it research, manufacturing, simulation, training, and so on. And each of those areas, kind of refer back to these. Traditionally, the caves are kind of tucked away in dark spaces. Some of that was due to technology. A lot of it had to do with the silos of the organization that's using them. So that said, the ROI on the use of that, depending on whether it's higher ed or industry or whatever have you, is interesting. The more silos, the longer it takes to get your return, regardless of what that return looks like. It doesn't have to be monetary. But I think probably the biggest thing that people are starting to go is, wait a minute, this has a lot more applications. And part of that's due to other market forces. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I think, thinking beyond the box, right? This is kind of the box when we think about it. This is actually the stereotypical cave, right? So ceiling, floor, walls, the whole deal. This one's at Iowa State. A lot of organizations are saying, well, wait a minute. If I have more organizations or more groups using this, it increases the utilization, which drives the ROI, and so on, and so on, and so on. That's kind of what's driving the market force. So that leads us to kind of outside the box thinking when it comes to cave design. So when you think of a cave, we're thinking of a box or a big power wall. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with virtual production, esports broadcasting, all those things. That underlying technology, be it Unreal Engine, be it Unity, is what drives all of those, right? What's the difference? If you can build a structure like this, or a cave that has depth, dimension, can be used for various use cases, you can then expand the base application, and the cost to do that is insignificant. The cost to add virtual production to a cave, the cost to add esports broadcasting to a cave, it is a rounding error in the cost, the overall cost of an implementation. So this started as a concept, this design, but became a reality. And it is actually pretty close to being deployed at a university. And here is a video of that being tested. So this is being fat tested in our facilities in Marshalltown, Iowa. And that's Nate. He's the chief head guy that does the testing, and boy, is he picky. But you can see how big it is. It's a floor. The ceiling isn't intact there, and the digital signage return is not intact on it, but you get the idea, right? So virtual production, esports, broadcasting, 3D visualization, daily presentations, all out of the same facility and all out of the same platform, the same implementation. So it's actually being installed in a library. And what's the reason for that? So people have access to it, right? So So it doesn't get shoved into a corner or it doesn't belong to one specific group. It's in the library. So many organizations on campus can utilize it. They're going to use it for architectural visualization, fashion visualization. Everybody wants to be a part of this. Esports is a big conversation all over the place. So adding those features and functionalities expands the use case, makes it more usable. And there's a lot more to it than just, you know, a visualization system sitting in the corner. It has a lot more capability than that. Fast forward a little bit. Multi-use spaces are being built for visualization. In other words, 3D visualization isn't being specifically built for adoption in a dark corner somewhere. Part of it's due to the display technology, right? So when we're using projectors, yeah, you need dark. Now we're using LED. You can do it in broad daylight. Doesn't matter. So the ability to apply the technology in a wide variety of applications is certainly there. The scale at which you can deploy it is incredible. And the technologies that actually drive it are being widely used across many, many different market segments. So this is another example of a multi-use space. So this is actually kind of a theater that doubles as a classroom, that doubles as a VR lab, right? So that display in this particular room is 30 feet plus wide, 18 feet tall. There's two of them. The one on the back wall, which looks like a little gray square, has 16 feet wide and 9 feet high. That's called a vanity display, right? So if somebody's standing in front of the big display looking at the audience, they've got a big vanity display. They can see what they're talking about. Another interesting component of this, in addition to virtual production and addition to 3D visualization, and really whatever else they want to do. Oh, and by the way, it isn't a separate system. This is the same organization, same entity. We're leveraging the same infrastructure that's driving that cave I showed you there, the round cave in the previous slides. So it's not isolated pools of technology now. It's clustered technology that can be used campus-wide and beyond, multi-campus and so on. So yes, there are certain things that are local to this particular system, but lion's share of the technology is in a different building, in a different location, intended for use only in the cave. And we were able to, you know, disseminate that and be able to leverage it for other locations on campus. So the other component with this is if you're looking at the outside of a building, so here we're looking outside in, we would never have been able to do this if it hadn't been for LED. But what's important to understand about this slide is you see the picture on the left. Well, that's what the picture on the right is going to look like from the exterior. So that's called transparent LED. So we can see out those windows and we'll see during the day whatever artwork, whatever the university wants to put up there, whatever student projects want to be displayed there, but that will not be seen inside the building. So an interesting use case, right? So lots of different things going on in that space. 3D visualization, virtual production, class being taught, and so on. And then you have an artistic yet visual experience outside, daytime and nighttime. So kind of what's driving this? You know, I brought this up, I think the last time I spoke, we talked a little bit about the metaverse. If we go around the room, we'll find that the metaverse, check the time here, everybody has a different idea about what the metaverse is. But by and large, this is what Facebook wants you to think it is, right? HMD. HMDs have their place. We use a lot of them. We deploy a lot of them. We use them in conjunction with VR caves and so on. But one thing that it has done is brought attention to the virtual world, right? whatever we think that is. And that's what we're going to talk about here for a minute. So when you think about 3D visualization, we immediately think stereo, we think HMD, we think something in front of our eyes. That is, I don't want to put a time frame on it, but that is going to be something of the past, probably within the next 5 to 10 years, right? Right now, if you look at this video, hopefully the audio is off. So we're kind of familiar with this, right? We all kind of understand what this is. But doing it on this scale is one thing. Many organizations have gotten this to scale much, much larger. This organization, for example, has this working on a very large screen. We're talking about something that is 14 feet diagonal, and it looks great. I just saw it 2 months ago. I couldn't take a picture of it. I couldn't take a video of it, but it is absolutely legit and works. Probably the best I've ever seen. So Naked Eye 3D is becoming a reality. And I think over the next 5 or 10 years, closer to 5, we're going to see very large scale implementations for certain applications that do not require eyewear. All right, so what else are we seeing? Where are we seeing great adoption? Esports, as I mentioned, so incredibly fast moving. Adoption is incredibly fast. It is likely, if you listen to most universities, believe that the revenues associated with esports events is going to equal their football programs. So there's tremendous amount of resource being poured into that now. Not so much in facilities, but there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built out, you know, human capital, coaching staffs and so on. And many of your universities are there. I'm sure you are well aware of that. Where else are we seeing the VR technology used? Virtual tours, right? So you can put on HMD, sit in front of your monitor, or go to a 3D theater and take a virtual tour of wherever, you know, whatever you want. I saw a U2 concert probably about a month ago. Incredible in 3D stereo. I was there, incredible. And, you know, those are things that we didn't see 10 years ago. People were like, the TV, I bought that thing, put it in my living room, and there was nothing to watch, right? That's a lot of people's experience with 3D. Or red and blue glasses, that's another one. Construction design and management, I can't tell you the adoption rate there. So Turner Construction is rapidly moving from HMDs to immersive conference rooms, because being able to communicate to a client what the building is going to look like and taking them on a walkthrough is very different if you're sitting in the same room with someone with HMDs on, right? Because you can't see them, you can't feel their reactions. As Emma Jane mentioned, there's something about being together and being able to collaborate. There's a lot of unspoken words that take place in communication, and that's a whole different conversation. But construction's doing it. Other ways they're using it in construction are for project management. So in the augmented world, you put on HoloVisions or whatever have you, and a project manager will walk out onto the site and see the foundations of the building, which are existing, but then it will be virtually built in front of them, and you can see, hey, man, that's going to work great. So all of these things we are seeing, we're being asked to do. And so when you think about metaverse, all of these things are part of the metaverse. They all run off the same gaming engines, right? As we use for VR, but the use cases are being expanded, which brings us to the next interesting thing. So where does crypto, NFTs, brick and mortar fit into all of this? Because it does, right? So crypto baristas, I'm gonna just spend 1 second on this. So crypto baristas is a cool thing. It's a cool project, right? So you can go out and you can buy your own barista as an NFT. You can socialize in the coffee shop in the metaverse, or you can go to the brick and mortar store in New York, buy yourself a cup of coffee using crypto, and hang out. So it's an interesting experiment. It's an interesting business. It's definitely a test project, see how it works, learn from it, and so on and so forth. But that kind of brings us up to the whole NFT thing, and in real life, right? So as we discussed, and as Emma Jane mentioned, there's something about being in person. So multi-million-dollar in real life experience based on metaverse and gaming technologies was built in Vegas. I don't know if anybody's been to Area 15. Coolest thing ever. I walk into a video game, or I walk into a virtual world that is what I want it to be. And I can interact with people in that virtual world. So it's a metaverse in real life experience. And we're seeing a lot of that. So it doesn't just exist in HMDs. It doesn't just exist in, a VR lab. These are in real life experiences that people are demanding, quite frankly. I mean, if you think about virtual tours, many universities we work with are using or want to use the 3D visualization system for virtual tours. So there again is that crossover, because people are used to using it on their phone, they're used to sitting in their living room, consuming media that is augmented, completely virtual, and so on. They expect to see that and they feel that and experience that in real life. All right, so brings us to the next one. So many of these spaces, as I kind of alluded to earlier, are being designed with multi use cases, right? So virtual, this and that and the other. Well, a lot of these spaces are being built for what's called infotainment, right? So infotainment is you have a learning experience, and at the same time, it's that educational component is masked behind entertainment type experiences. So this is a building that we're working on that has incredible technology on the walls. So you've got LED displays, as you can see, around the ribbon or the upper side, the upper half of this building. And you see this orb in the middle. Well, this orb does something really interesting. It was modeled after a project I worked on a few years ago in Las Vegas. This is quite interesting. So this is a 30-foot in diameter LED mirrored orb, and it is in the Resort World complex. If you just watch this for just a second, you'll see how the mixed media aspects of this really become interesting. So it weighs, I don't even remember, but it's 3 stories tall. There's a 3-level steel structure that kind of supports it. But this is what's being done in the entry of this building. Being done there for a variety of reasons. One, imagine the types of things you can display on that orb that relate to real world business, real world educational opportunities, while you're looking at virtual backgrounds, right? So this is what I mean when I say spaces are being developed for a lot of different uses, right? It's not just wow, it's not just the pop, it's not just for fundraising, it has a lot of different uses in mind. So that's one that is fun to work on, and we're excited to bring that out. That's kind of what it's going to look like at the entry. It's a view from eye level inside. There's another spin on that same building. So because it's an educational institution, there are multiple disciplines in the building. So each one of these LED chain links is sort of interconnected. And the message there is that the that the curriculum is interconnected within that building, right? All the disciplines are connected together, which they are. And we brought that through a glass window and extended it outside the building so people would, notice it. Because the building is kind of architecturally, many of the buildings that were built in the 40s and 50s were kind of architecturally streamlined, if you will. And that's a real thing, streamlined Art Deco, which is what this is. So this helps break it up, bring a little more interest to it, but still can be used for a variety of different applications. This one, same building, is another concept we developed. This is interesting because it allows you to animate the ceiling system. I'm going to show you this video. It's a very short video, but each one of these little orbs can produce 16 million colors, moves up and down, so the choreography can change all the time. And then of course, the LED around the ribbon of the building can be choreographed to do whatever. So here we go. It's fascinating when you see that. They can be hoisted up to the top of the roof structure, and that entire facility can be used for 3D visualization, can be used for many, many different things. So again, multidiscipline sort of environment. And that's just an abstract sculpture. And that is the end of my 150 slides. I think we're on time, yeah? Yes, we are. So I will stop sharing. Any questions, comments?
I just want to say thank you both for the insight and perspective that you've kind of provided here. Emma Jane with that human experience and what connects us, and really nice follow on as well as kind of the aspect of where's the technology going to take a look at that, what inspires us, and that last one was really very cool. So just want to say thank you guys for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
So I have a question, since I haven't seen any others come up in the chat, but I guess the question that I had is in terms of the technology and the hardware costs that come through for these kind of installations, is there more of a, it looks like there's more of a focus on the experience, and there's not too much of a worry on the cost of those installations and hardware?
I think there's always a concern about cost, depending on the client. I mean, the budgets for these, they're wide. You can find anything from 75,000 to many millions, right? But it's not the cost so much as it's how you deploy and design the space, right? We're working on a project for an esports program. It started off as, this is a very budget challenged project, very budget challenged. And the idea was, hey, we need to make this more engaging. We need to make the space more interesting. And they said, hey, can we just put a display on that wall? And we said, yeah, that's not interesting. How about we do what's called projection mapping on that wall, right? Similar cost, but tremendous more impact. So it's how you view it, right? And the tools that you use to deploy the technology. Anybody can hang a projector. Anybody can, design a flat display. It takes, when you start to think about things that are outside the box a little bit, or stretching that use case a little bit, it's not always about money. It's about how you view it, right?
That's awesome to understand. I think that's, in my opinion, that's really where they talk about opportunity, and that's in taking risk, and that's where you learn these new things, and that's great that people are willing to really just explore that forward to see the impact and see how that's going to work. So yeah, that's
One
awesome.
thing that, if I may, one thing that I spend a lot of my time doing in my work when I was on the higher education side, and if anything, just as much now, is helping to determine with the university what the return on investment can be, and what do they want it to be, and what does it need to be, and how can we help them get there. Whether that return on investment is increased engagement of students or retention of staff, or perhaps increased engagement and graduation rates of non-typical neurodivergent students that have different ways of thinking and learning and absorbing information and giving their attention. I think the role of storytelling for teaching and research and entrepreneurial activity, and using the buildings around us as the canvas, and then thinking about how those spaces are going to be able to support multidisciplinary activity. Quite often shared governance of facilities on any campuses, private sector, higher education, anywhere. It's hard when you've got multiple people wanting to use something and play with it at the same time. And it can be quite a new way of thinking. But when that can, in a way, de-risk some of the investment opportunities for the individual colleges and individual infrastructure units of the university. If it's a shared resource with some shared governance, it's de-risking the investment to a degree, because there's more people with more of a stake in it. And that can be an advantage for institutions as well. So helping people determine what the ROI should be and what kind of an impact and legacy it can give an institution to raise its profile and to enhance the experience for its students and staff is something that's of research interest to me. And it's what I'm doing a bit of my doctoral work in, is digital transformation in higher ed. So it's good fun to learn.
Wonderful.
Forgot to mention too, I didn't really reference where the metaverse and NFTs are tying into this, but NFTs are huge with the fashion industry, right? So everybody wants to have a virtual self. So as the fashion design world creates garments, they want to understand what that NFT version of that garment is going to look like. So we see a lot of interest in big biz for fashion design schools, so that they can visualize what that will look like online. It's another interesting area.
Yeah, that changing the landscape and how people are using it and adopting the technology and the ability. I mean, that being able to have that in your handheld in your phone as well, be able to experience as well. Absolutely. There's a comment from Ben Britton I just wanted to read. So it goes back to your last slide. The ball suggests dynamic, such as moving display systems like animatronic displays, robotic televisions. Ben, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I thought that was very intriguing application, and it's the idea that the walls can move.
The wall can move, the ceiling can move. The choreography opportunities there are limitless. And that used to be incredibly cost prohibitive. It really did. I mean, these were things that only Disney could afford to do. And now I can put them in your living room, quite frankly. It's that common. So there's that type of technology available at really a very minimal cost. I mean, when I say minimal, I'm talking about minimal.
I have a question, or mixed comment and question for both Emma Jane and Gary. What you showed was just amazing. The visualization, the different layouts, the different setups for these things is amazing, with the variety, the diversity you've got. But I have a question. Where do you see, what is your opinion of the state of the art in producing content for these facilities? Multiple versions of content. How easy is it to author content for this? Is this something that the institution that has the facility built for themselves, would they be able to do that? How easily do you see that being achieved by the institution that buys the facility?
Emma Jane, do you have comments on that? I do.
Yeah.
Yours
Yeah, sure.
would be different from mine. Yeah.
Okay. So as discreet as I can always be when I'm making a presentation and not stressing the sales role that I have in my current format today, you can outsource quality software and content development to a wonderful company called McDime. Aside from that, what I did when I was in higher education, as well as do some outsourcing to McDime, was I built a student team that would create content for us as well. And I empowered the students that would work with us as interns to be the heart of the visualization facility and activity on campus, so that the students, when they had, if they didn't have relationships with the faculties for specific projects, they would be the vehicle for the content creation, because then we're giving them and the faculty ownership over the facility and what we're doing with it. We're giving them the ability to advance their resume and to build on the skills that they have for whatever their degrees are in. And then let's face it, it's a 3D facility quite often that's got hardware and software and preventative maintenance and people associated with it to run it and be strategic leads and manage it and be business operations. Well, the content, there wouldn't be any of that without the content developers. So when an enthusiastic student is knocking on the door with them, 10 years ago with a memory stick in the hand, or a student's knocking on the door wanting to learn how to use Blender and wanting to take advantage of some beautiful displays because they've got an interview coming up for an internship somewhere, the doors are open. Having a very open door policy for visualization centers and bringing students to the core is a great way to give ownership over the people that are using it and letting them create the content, I believe.
And I'll add to that. So content is king, right? You can have the most coolest looking displays in the world, but if they don't have anything on them, they're pretty much worthless. They're boat anchors. That's not a new problem. We've been through this before in the out-of-home digital signage market, right? So when you drive down the highway and you see these great big billboards, you're walking through a shopping mall and you're seeing content on displays, content drives everything. Most organizations out there, I would say in the university segment, have tremendous creative resource that know how to use Unity, that know how to develop in Unreal Engine, as well as many other languages and platforms, right? So it's a lever to deliver content to that, whatever that facility is. That's one way to do it. One of the limitations in the market right now on the industry side, right? So if you look at most film production, it's being done in a virtual environment. So what that means is they went from green screens, we're all familiar with that, a weather dude standing in front of this thing, right? Well, now they've gone to these massive LED volumes and are using Unreal Engine to display the background imagery that you're shooting in front of. So you can be anywhere. Very realistic, compresses the time of production and so on and so forth. The limiting factor today are the people that actually understand how to author that content and use those systems. So the industry is kind of responding, the educational industries are responding to help deliver that talent to the market. But there's never a problem with too much content. It's always the problem is there's not enough, because we consume so much on a daily basis. But the resources are there, especially in the university settings. I mean, they're definitely.
I have a follow-up on that. A lot of times I get, when I get into discussions with colleagues in an education environment, oh, well, I have this really great piece of software that I've been using in the Rift with my students. And then they ask me, well, can you show this in your facility? And then I go, can we get access to the source code? Can we, can we rebuild it with the projection setups for our facility? Do you see any way around, because the gorilla in the room is, for like it or lump it, Meta has been doing a wonderful job capturing mind share. But, a lot of the stuff, we all know these things are just displays. The content we can switch it, we can migrate it very easily, but it's this sharing across displays that seems to be a problem. Are you aware of anything, any ways around that?
So yes, and it's a very timely question. So the ability to stream, when I say deliver by stream, and it sounds kind of weird, right? So we sit and play video games all day, right? That's streaming content in a way. In a commercial environment, or where you have a solution in one place and somewhere else you want to see that content, how do you do that without having duplicate systems? There's a protocol and a streaming technology called NDI that the broadcast industry is using, incredibly capable. We're testing it right now for delivery of real-time content like that, 3D visualization content. It will be a cost-effective way to display content from one system to another. And it's some of the slides I was showing you where you had the CAAV and then that big display in the room. That's exactly how we're going to get content from one point to another without having to have $1 million cluster and spend, countless hours formatting data, right? So yeah, the answers are there. It's a question of scalability, which the broadcast industry has figured out. They really did. So yeah, there are some cost-effective ways to do it.
Great. So I've got two questions I want to try and get through quickly. So I'm going to go with Ben's because it follows in continuity. So universal scene description, USD file form, the interoperability of interactive 3D environments, I think is the question. Is that what USD meant? And he's also wondering what NDI stands for.
Network device interface. NDI is it's a protocol and a codec actually for collaboration of uncompressed video. So you can share incredibly rich media in a stream, or you can compress it, right? So there's different protocols out there. There's different flavors of NDI, if you will, that were designed for that. And again, came out of necessity of the pandemic. It accelerated the growth because, and the explosive growth though, because the broadcast industry was woefully ill-equipped for the pandemic. They adopted it, and now all of a sudden, everything broadcast industry does is streamed information, right? So NFL football games every day. I mean, they're streaming that data so you can deliver it to any device you want. So we're leveraging that same technology to deliver stereo graphics data.
Excellent. Thanks for describing that. And then a little bit of change from Jeff Fisher. How do you suggest groups storage, manage, or protect the 3D assets they are creating for these applications?
It's a great question. And there's a couple different answers, right? So the ability, it's a little off topic, but I'll bring it around. So the cloud, being able to scale GPUs in the cloud is real. Being able to on demand get compute, use compute, and then when you don't need it, don't pay for it, right? So that allows you to do some very complex modeling, very complex display of graphics information for a very low upfront cost. That's number one. On-prem, hybrid, and cloud storage of these assets is it's quite common, right? When you look at, we tend to focus on our industry, but when you start to look at what other industries are doing, when you look at what film production studios are doing from a storage perspective, it's all being done in AWS and Azure, right? So that's where they store the assets. A lot of the transcoding, a lot of the manipulation of that's done in the cloud as well. It's on-demand resources. They don't have to own racks and stacks of equipment. So that's the short answer.
Okay. Outstanding. Okay, well, it looks like we're hitting the top of the hour here, and just figured I'd wrap up now since I don't see any more questions in the chat. So thank you both. Very informative, and really enjoyed this perspective that you both brought here. So thanks again for taking the time and put this together.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
Thank you for the invitation. Good to see you.
Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend.
Take care.